Um, I'm very, very pleased to introduce Cindy Weese today. Cindy's been involved with the YWCA for 29 years, and she began there as a volunteer in the domestic violence shelter before joining the staff and serving in a variety of roles. She left the organization for 2 years and did a stint as director of the Montana Coalition Against Domestic and Sexual Violence in Helena before returning to the YW in 2001. She has served as executive director, surrounded by a powerful team of dedicated staff, volunteers, and community supporters for the past 20 years. And so, Cindy, take it away, please.
Thank you, Wolf. I miss seeing Wolf. We worked together for many, many years when I was in our job training program. And nice to see so many familiar faces.
I will interject. Will everyone please mute other than the speaker? Thank you.
So thank you all for giving me an opportunity to talk about the YWCA and what we're doing in 2021, and to share some information and photos about our new facility, the Meadowlark, that just opened in April here on 3rd Street. And you may look in my office, I still haven't completely unpacked or hung any pictures yet, but we are getting moved into other parts of the building rapidly. Actually, we have families moving in every day. So I have a PowerPoint that I'm going to bring up, and you won't be able to see me when this is up, but please don't hesitate to interrupt me and ask questions along the way. And let me see if I can do this correctly. Can everyone see that now?
Yes.
Awesome. All right, so 2021 is the YWCA Missoula's 110th anniversary here in Missoula. And over the past century, we have literally touched the lives of tens of thousands of women and children and families. Today, our services really are focused on 4 main goals, and those are ending domestic and sexual violence, changing the lives of homeless families, transforming our community, and then mitigating the impact of trauma on the lives of children. And so I'm going to take a few minutes just to talk about some of our specific programs around those goals. So first is our work to address domestic and sexual violence. These are our signature services. I think we are best known in this community for the work that we do to support survivors of domestic and sexual violence. And today, our services really break down into 2 broad categories, emergency services and then support services. So emergency services, we have our domestic violence shelter, where we are able to serve both individuals and then parents who are fleeing violent homes. As you can see, last year we served 146 adults and 94 children in our domestic violence shelter. We've been in a 7-bedroom home in a residential neighborhood since 1997. And I will show you what our expanded shelter is going to look like here in the Meadowlark a little later on. We also have operated for the past 40 years a 24-hour crisis hotline for survivors to call us, as well as we get a lot of calls from friends and family members who are really wanting information about how best to support their loved one. We get calls from community members and other service providers. So it's an information and referral line, as well as a line that can provide support and immediate access to our advocates. We also offer a walk-in center during business hours, Monday through Friday. And that, again, is a place similar to our crisis line where someone can just walk in and talk to trained advocates. We have volunteers that staff that walk-in center as well as our staff members. And then we provide trained advocates to work with St. Pat's Hospital in their first step sexual trauma program. So if someone has been sexually assaulted, a YWCA advocate can be with them when they go to the hospital, when they report to the police if they choose to do that. And we work with adult and teen survivors of sexual assault. Last year, we worked with 54 of those survivors. So on the support end of our domestic violence services, we have support groups that we offer weekly, as well as we have private groups that are offered on an as-needed basis. We work with both adults and children. Our weekly support groups, we have 3 groups for adult survivors, and then we have 5 age-appropriate groups that are offered at the same time. We have in the Meadowlark, we will have a new legal clinic that has opened. It's a partnership that we have with the UM School of Law, as well as the Weese Law Group, which is a private firm that specializes in family legal issues as well as domestic violence. And they will be offering services free of charge to survivors of domestic violence in our programs. And they're working not only on issues related specifically to the violence in their lives, but holistic legal services, helping them to address things. Maybe it's housing issues, maybe they have credit or bankruptcy issues that they're dealing with. Our legal interns can help them with that. We also are going to have a new health and dental care clinic at the Meadowlark. It's a partnership sponsored by Community Hospital. So Community Hospital will 2 days a week offer a walk-in clinic similar to the clinics that they have scattered around town, and they will be able to provide medical care to the residents living in the Meadowlark and the 2 shelters in the Meadowlark. And then we have a dental hygienist that is donating her time twice a month to provide basic dental care and assessment, again, for the residents living in our shelters. We also have a clinical intern program that we have a clinical intern supervisor who is we were able to leverage her expertise and bring on student interns who are working on their hours for licensure. And they provide individual and group therapy for folks in our programs. Up until now, they've been working primarily with adults. We are expanding to include a partnership with Partnership for Children out of the Youth Homes program, and they will be able to provide services, individual and family-based therapy for children living in our programs. And then finally, we operate Planet Kids. Planet Kids is a supervised visitation exchange center. We monitor both visits between children and their non-custodial parents when the courts have ordered them to have supervised visitation only. And then we also monitor exchanges, custodial exchanges. So if parents don't want to have contact with each other or have been court ordered because of an order of protection not to have contact with each other, they can use Planet Kids to make that exchange. And last year we served, as you can see, 166 adults, 131 children for over 1,500 visits and exchanges. Are there any questions about these services before I move on? So our largest program these days is our housing program for homeless families. We offer 3 types of housing, or support 3 types of housing for families who are homeless and have dependent children. We have our emergency services, and we have a walk-in center for homeless families and those at risk of homelessness, those who are at imminent risk of homelessness. So they have either received an eviction notice, or they know that they are struggling with rent and at any point will not be able to pay their rent. They can come in and visit with us, or they're homeless. So a lot of the families that we're serving have been living in their cars or camping out when they come to us. We also offer emergency services. We offer winter motel vouchers. So because motel vouchers are very expensive, we try to pool our money and we use it during the 5 winter months to ensure that no family has to sleep in their car or camp out at any time during the winter. And we're able, it's generally 1 to 3 nights of motel stay until we can either get them in someplace else, or they can move out of town and to families elsewhere. And last year, we spent about $20,000 on these motel vouchers. So they're very expensive. One of the good things about the Meadowlark, our new facility, is that we've planned it so that we can offer same-day access to the shelter and won't have to use motel vouchers. That's our hope. So our transitional services, we have just opened the new family housing center within the Meadowlark. And the family housing center is jointly operated with Family Promise. For those who aren't familiar with Family Promise, it is a collaboration operated by the Missoula Interfaith Collaborative. And it is, I think right now there are 30 churches and businesses who participate in Family Promise. And until we recently opened the Family Housing Center, Family Promise churches worked on a rotating basis to provide housing within church facilities for up to 4 families each night. And they've been our main partner on serving homeless families. So 5 years ago, we decided, it would make the most sense for us to work together and operate out of a central facility, because YWCA was using motel rooms, they were using church facilities, and neither one of us thought that the services that we were offering were appropriate or adequate for the needs that we were seeing. So we are going to operate the Family Housing Center. It's for unsheltered homeless families with dependent children. And I anticipate we will probably work with up to 300 families a year in our new facility. The YWCA also operates transitional housing. We have right now 10 apartments scattered across town where we provide up to 18 months of independent living for single domestic violence survivors with dependent children. And we've been doing that since 1994, so a long time. And some of those units are in partnership with the Missoula Housing Authority. They provide project-based Section 8 vouchers for us to operate those. And then finally, we're able to support all of the families using our emergency services and transitional services to try to move them, and that is our ultimate goal, move them into homes of their own, permanent homes of their own. And so the YWCA has been fortunate to receive for the past 4 years a large HUD grant that gives us around $300,000 a year to provide deposit and rent assistance for literally homeless families. And we can even pay up to 2 and 3 times or double and triple deposits because we're working with a lot of families who have poor credit history. They may have past evictions. They don't have any income sometimes going into their rental units. So we can provide that. And then we have been providing up to 12 months of subsidized rent. But with the housing crisis that Missoula is in right now, we were just applied for and received permission from HUD to provide up to 24 months of rent assistance for homeless families. And I will say, despite the amount of money that we have, that we've been able to really create some flexibility within the program, we are really struggling to get families into rental units. It's just such a competitive market right now, and the costs have just skyrocketed. You know, we really want to get families into homes that eventually they're going to be able to afford the rent on their own. And that in the past 18 months, it has changed significantly. So before I move on, any questions, comments about our housing services? Suggestions?
I'd like to ask to what extent you feel your provisions for homeless families has successfully impact the overall homeless issue in Missoula.
Well, I think we've had a significant impact because we have been able to move so many families into permanent homes of their own. You know, family homelessness looks a little different than homelessness, individuals without children, the folks that the POV is serving, in that family homelessness tends to be episodic. It rather than chronic. And so primarily it happens because either they don't have the money, so it's an economic issue, or domestic violence is a huge factor in family homelessness. It's such a strong link between domestic violence and family homelessness that in Missoula and across the country, up to 70% of homeless families are headed by a single mother, and the majority of them have fled violent homes. So that is actually the primary reason that the YWCA started our housing program for homeless families over 10 years ago, is because of what we were seeing out of our domestic violence shelter. So because it's economics and because of the domestic violence link, and that's not to say that we don't have families and parents who are struggling with mental health issues or addiction issues, because we do. It's just we don't see the prevalence of that like you do with individual homelessness. And so our issues, if we can, you know, shore them up financially, if we can help them address any safety issues they have, they're much more likely to be able to be successful in permanent housing. We think that our partnership with Family Promise is only going to increase the success of our program. Family Promise, what they bring to the table, so the YWCA has just a depth of experience working with shelter programs and working with folks who are homeless. Family Promise has the breadth of volunteer support. And so bringing the two programs together, we're going to be able to rely on it's 500 to 700 volunteers. Some of those volunteers are going to be able to provide mentorship to families and follow them along even after they leave our shelter, providing support for them to ensure that once they move into permanent housing, they're successful in it.
Cindy, how much support do you get from the city and the county?
So we get support from both. I will kind of two types of support that we've received in the past few years. we received significant support in the form of community development block grants from the city to build the Meadowlark and build the new family housing center. And then the county also helped us secure state CDBG funding for the facility. And then on an ongoing basis, we have been receiving city CDBG public service funds to provide motel rooms for homeless families, and county community assistance funding to provide staffing for both of our shelter facilities. So good support. Where we don't get any support really is from the state, other than this CDBG grant, which was a federal funding anyways. We don't get any state funding for our services. Any other questions?
Yeah, Cindy.
Yeah.
I was just wondering, you know, I've worked with Family Promise, but in the past, there has not been a groundswell of enthusiasm for having the volunteers do anything other than just provide services as, you know, and meals. And we were not encouraged to provide connection education. So going forward, if that's the new model, how does that work? And is that something that your organization is going to bring to Family Promise, and how can we interface with that better?
Sure, good question. It is something that, so are you familiar with the HAN, Housing Advocate Network, that's run through Missoula Interfaith Collaborative?
No.
So that, it's not specifically Family Promise, but it's through the Missoula Interfaith Collaborative, and it is the interface between the Family Housing Center and volunteers who are going to do things other than just provide meals. So the Housing Advocate Network, it is a collection of volunteers who are trained to provide mentorship to families. We also hope that we will have folks in that network who have expertise and I want to do even some teaching different workshops for the families, or providing, you know, tutoring for the children. So we're really trying to be open to anything that folks can bring to the table that would benefit the families in the center. And we have the space here at the Meadowlark to provide room for those things to happen. I know that the HAN network is going to be working with a computer lab that the Missoula Interfaith Collaborative was able to secure. I think it has 10 laptop computers that they will be able to use for, you know, workshops and even instruction on computer-based skills.
Thank you.
Yeah, so I would reach out to MIC. It's actually Zeke Campfield is running the HAN program.
Perfect.
All right, I'm going to move on. So the YWCA also has a racial justice initiative. This is something that we've worked on now since 2003. And what we're really trying to do, our goal is to reach out and work with everyday people in everyday places to address and increase awareness of racism and encourage people to take steps to interrupt it when they see it and to become allies to people of color. And today we're doing that through community education. And our community education, we partner with Empower Montana, which is another organization here in Missoula that does work to educate about prejudice reduction. They also are working with individual businesses and groups to do education, and we partner with them on some of their workshops. We also have other partnerships right now, what we're trying to do is really elevate and where we can add our voice to the efforts of other organizations that are BIPOC led by Black, Indigenous, or people of color. For example, we have been working with All Nations Healthcare Center and their Project Beacon initiative, which is to raise awareness and take action around the murdered and missing Indigenous peoples issues. And then we also have authored the Montana Racial Equity Report, which is a triennial report focused on just looking at the metrics and where in Montana we are struggling with issues of racism and keeping a record of that and tracking the progress of different initiatives. It is something that we haven't had really the capacity to move beyond what we are currently doing, but this year we did partner with Empower Montana and hired a racial justice engagement specialist together. And so we expect that we will be able to increase our efforts in the years to come. And of course, as we all know, 2020 was a year of racial reckoning. And so the timing of our work is, well, it's never been more important than it is right now. Does anyone have any questions, comments? Excuse me. All right. So finally, we will have and have been building a new youth services program that will operate out of the Meadowlark, and it's really focused in 3 areas. We have a focus on empowerment, and we do this primarily through our GUTS leadership program for girls and gender diverse youth ages 9 to 18. The YWCA has operated the GUTS program since 2007, and we provide school-based activities, after summer action adventures and outdoor adventures, as well as community action projects monthly during the school year. And we serve about 250 girls in this program. We were able to, prior to COVID, we had just started a GUTS expansion program, and we're working in 5 communities outside of Missoula. COVID kind of put the skids to that. However, the silver lining, one of the silver linings of the pandemic was that we were able to move GUTS to a Zoom platform and actually bring in girls from around the state and even outside the state to participate in some of our school-based groups. The second area of focus for our youth services program is for services specifically for children who have witnessed domestic violence in their homes. And we do that through support groups. We have advocates who work with the children living in our domestic violence program. They offer activities 7 days a week in the shelter. They also provide advocacy for kids, and especially in the school system, making sure that their move to the shelter or their loss of their home doesn't disrupt their education as well. And then finally, we have programming for children experiencing housing instability. And what we're trying to do there is create positive experiences during their time with us. Again, trying to build resiliency among children in the hopes that their the trauma they experience because of being in a home where there's been domestic violence or because of housing instability and homelessness doesn't have a long-term impact that perpetuates the cycle of violence or generational poverty. And at any given time in our new facility, there will be 50 to 65 children living here. And so we want to make sure that we take advantage of that opportunity to intervene in their lives in a positive way.
You got asking for any questions here now?
Sure.
Hi. Right just north of you on Garfield Street, I think is a private school called Sussex School.
Yeah.
Have you had any contact with them? It's a very creative education program for kids. And it's what if they would have any opportunity to take in some of your kids temporarily.
Yeah, we have had a lot of contact with them. They've been a great support to us as we've been building the facility. I actually am meeting with Joelle and Shannon, their one of their school co-leaders next week. We had talked early on about how the students of Sussex could actually provide support for the kids living at the Meadowlark. I think one of the first things we're going to do is perhaps work on a big mural project that the students of Sussex do. We have a big Quonset hut in the back of our property that is really kind of a blank canvas for something like that. The other thing that we talked about is having the Sussex kids, because they are so creative, create some type of, whether it's a video or a little orientation packet for the kids moving into the Meadowlark that welcomes them here and kind of helps explain in kid-friendly language what they can expect while they're living with us. So doing some of those things, and then again, tutoring, we thought might be something they could do.
Good. Yeah. What other question I have there? I just live right across the street from Sussex School, so I see your construction going there, and I'm very impressed all the time. And I like the idea you have in the backyard north of the building a play area for the children. But I noticed it's separated into two separate play areas, and I'm very curious as to how you're going to handle putting children in one area or the other area.
Well, good question, Jim. And actually, I think that's going to launch us right into the next few slides where I can show you pictures and explain the three wings of the Meadowlark. But before I do, does anyone have any other questions regarding our youth services? Okay. So, looking forward. In the Meadowlark, what we hope to be able to do is serve all homeless families and domestic violence survivors who need our help when they need it the most. We haven't always had the capacity to do that in the past. That's why we designed this facility with that in mind. And so that is our hope. As I said, we also want to provide the support for children to prevent those educational and emotional disturbances that can impact them for the rest of their lives, and actually it can impact them so severely that it changes their brain development. And then, of course, the Meadowlark is going to be home to the YWCA's second century of service in Missoula, and a great place for us to be and bring almost all of our programs on site. So, in comes the Meadowlark. This is a picture of the Meadowlark just from a couple weeks ago. As I told Jim, the Meadowlark is a unique bird in that it has three wings, all designed to help women, children, and families take flight. And I'm going to quickly show you the three different wings. The center wing is the YWCA Program Center. So that's where all of our programs, other than our Planet Kids Supervised Visitation Center, operate out of the Meadowlark. Our admin offices are here now. This is the lobby, a new lobby. And what I will say about the lobby, this enters off of 3rd Street. And other than the residents of our domestic violence shelter, everyone enters through this main lobby to get into the building. And we had to create a building because we were bringing in a domestic violence shelter with a community program center, as well as the family housing center. And we had to create a building that was secure both internally and externally. And one of the things that we learned from our security experts and the Missoula Police Department is that a single point of entry is the most secure. We don't want people coming in from all different ways. This is one of the rooms in the program center. It's our Children's Activity Center, where the bulk of those youth services I talked about will be happening. We have many partnerships we've developed for our youth services. One of them is with the Boys and Girls Club. They will provide after-school activities from 2 until 6 p.m. every day during the school year, or every weekday during the school year. We also have a partnership with Missoula Parks and Rec, and they are going to provide summer and weekend activities, as well as activities working with children ages 0 to 5 in the center. And we have a number of other partnerships as well. We're going to be working with the Missoula Community Theater, with the library, and then we have neighbors nearby with the food bank. The food bank's going to provide meals for our residents, both grab-and-go breakfast and lunches during the school year. So that's in the main program center. So the east wing of the building is the expanded YWCA domestic violence shelter. So we will be moving out of the 7-bedroom home we've been in since 1997 and into this domestic violence shelter that doubles our capacity to serve survivors. What you're looking at right here is a picture of the kitchen kitchen and dining area. It was designed to provide individual cook stations. I think there's 4 individual cook stations, as well as the ability for communal meals. And there are 13 individual rooms in the domestic violence shelter. And so it will be busy and packed most of the time. And we will be able to serve not only families, but also individual survivors who don't have children. And we're very happy because we'll be able to now serve male survivors on site. In the past, we've had to, men who were fleeing domestic violence, we served them in motel rooms rather than in our shelter facility. And now we'll be able to serve them in our shelter facility because our rooms are designed for privacy. And this is the playground. So one of the playgrounds, Jim, that you saw is this one. This is the playground for the domestic violence shelter. It is separated from the 2 other outdoor areas. And so only children from the shelter will be playing in this playground. And although this picture shows fencing that you can see through, we're actually having that fixed so that women and children in the outdoor area won't be able to be viewed from the other outdoor areas or from the parking lot over here. And then here is one of the rooms in the domestic violence shelter. As you'll see, I'll show you one other snapshot of a room later on. We have, all the rooms have at least 1 set of bunk beds and a double bed or 2 sets of bunk beds. And all the rooms can sleep up to 5 family members in them. And they all also have a private full bath in the rooms. And there are 13, like I said, in the domestic violence shelter. So the west wing of the Meadowlark is our new Missoula Family Housing Center. The Family Housing Center is where we're partnering with Family Promise. This is the kitchen and dining area for that center. There's actually 7 individual cook stations for families down here, and this is the same in the domestic violence shelter. These cabinets down here, there are 25 locking cabinets that have a little pantry as well as a mini fridge in them. And when a family comes in and is assigned to a room, they get one of these locking cabinets as well to store their food. What you can't see here is that back behind here is a commercial kitchen area, and that is where Family Promise will be able to prepare meals, and we'll be serving them, preparing and serving them 6 nights a week to the families living there. And I think on Sunday night, folks have access to leftovers. This is the playground for the Family Housing Center. And again, the Family Housing Center has 25 individual rooms. And so we'll be serving a lot more families than the domestic violence shelter side. And so the playground area and the yard area is bigger. There's also an overflow space that is set up as a dorm style that can be used by either the domestic violence shelter or the Family Housing Center. And we can serve up to 6 families in the dorm space at any given time. And then here's just a wide view of that room I showed you before. So an example of one of the rooms, the bathroom is here beside these hooks. And all the rooms have these beautiful views of the mountains surrounding the valley. So that is it. Our goal, again, is to be able to serve a family or an individual right when they need it. So if they come in today and need shelter, we want to be able to provide that shelter tonight, and then the support they need to get into stable homes of their own and leave lives that have been filled with violence. Any questions?
Yes, I have another question here. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. Also, on the north end of your property, right next to Sussex School, is that bungalow you talked about. It looks like a rounded dome, blue color. And is that going to be used just for a maintenance shed for the whole project, or is that going to be something for the families to have fun in?
No. I mean, it'd be great if we had the ability to use it for fun, but we kept it. We thought about tearing it down, but we kept it as a maintenance, and then storage. We just need significant storage. And when we started calculating what it would cost to build square footage for storage, we thought, oh, that Quonset hut will work just fine.
Yeah. Okay.
Cindy, what is the plan for the old building?
So right now, we've actually had an ad hoc group working on that. Our plan right now is to keep it, and we're going to be doing some changes to our secret second stores, and we're going to need the space for storing some things and processing. So temporarily, we're going to keep it. We will consider perhaps leasing it out in the future. We looked at selling. We did get a CMA on it. Right now, that doesn't seem to make the most sense, especially because we share a parking lot with our store, and that parking is really valuable to us. But we have some challenges right now, especially in the last 2 weeks. They've cleared out the encampment down by the river. And if you've driven by our building right now, there's a lot of tents set up right on our sidewalk. And so we have some challenges we're going to be talking to the city about. I have a meeting with actually the Pavarello today, this afternoon, we can do.
Gary, you had a hand up.
Yes, good morning, Cindy.
Hi, Gary.
Up the street from you is International School. Do you do anything with that school at all for children?
You know, we haven't yet, but we know them. You know, we were doing capital campaigns at the same time. We actually early on talked about jointly developing on that site that they're on. So I think now that we both have our building projects out of the way, I would imagine our youth services program manager will be reaching out to them.
Yeah, okay, thank you.
Yes.
Anyone else?
Cindy, excuse me, I've heard from other similar organizations that staffing is getting to be a huge problem. Do you experience that too?
We are experiencing it now. You know, we had to hire 4 FTE overnight staff for the new facility. We've had overnight staff at our domestic violence shelter, but now we need it for the family housing center side. Plus, our youth program is new. We're trying to staff up there, and it's been quite a challenge. Like I haven't experienced in the last 20 years in this position. You know, it used to be we'd get 40 resumes for every opening, and now it's really challenging. We've raised wages pretty significantly in the past 18 months, and that's helping a little bit, but not as much as we'd hoped that it would. Yeah, Wolf, you're the expert on this. What should we be doing?
You know, it's funny because I hear the exact same verbiage from your counterpart at the YWCA, and they've done the same thing. They raised the wages, and Heather said in 23 years that she's been there, she's never seen a shortage like that.
No.
I mean, everybody's just scrambling, and what it means is that senior staff is pulling, you know, 18-hour shifts just to fill in the blanks. And I'm sure at your organization, it's the same thing.
It is, and you know, it's especially coming off such a big project like this, where people are tired, and now it's like, oh, now we need you to work evening and weekend hours. It is a big concern of mine, actually.
One other question, you talked about the collaboration with Parks and Rec. On the flip side, do you see any competition from them? I mean, they have the ability to use public funds to supplement their organization, and I'm getting some complaints from others that say, you know, it's an unfair competition type of thing. I was wondering what your reaction to that was.
Yeah, so we don't see, I've heard that as well. I think for us, it probably won't be an issue. You know, we aren't kind of outreaching to bring people in to use our services. And we're just trying to meet a demand. So for us, it's been very nice that they, and very helpful that they'll be able to partner with us to provide some services that we wouldn't be able to provide no matter what. We couldn't get enough grant funding to provide the staffing for those services.
You know, Cindy, with the breadth of your services, which is admirable, I mean, it's totally impressive what all you guys do. I was curious, what area was the hardest hit during COVID?
Well, as far as the impact on the program, our GUTS program really took a hit just because schools weren't, you know, operating the same. It really kind of put a stop to some of the work that we dreamed of doing for years and had just started doing. So that, but the impact on our shelter services was also significant in that it was very interesting. We expected our domestic violence shelter to just fill up, and we were scared because we had to de-intensify it for social distancing and COVID protocols. So we were really afraid that we were going to run into some problems. But for some reason, the pandemic had kind of a chilling effect on people leaving violent homes. And so our numbers were lower than they'd been in years during the past 12 months.
Interesting.
Yeah, very interesting. I'm really concerned about what's going to happen to the number of homeless families in our community. You know, we started our program after the 2008 recession because the numbers just started to skyrocket. And with the housing crisis that we're seeing now, I would imagine we're going to see another uptick in the number of homeless families. And we designed this facility based on waiting lists of programs across the community, based on our waiting list and Family Promise. And we thought we designed something that would, again, be able to always provide same-day access to housing. And now I'm afraid that if we're not able to move people into their own housing, that we may run into, get to the point where we are out of rooms for homeless families.
Jack?
Hey, Cindy. Congratulations on this whole Metal Arc project. I've never been so impressed in all my years in Missoula as such a community-wide supported and collaborating venture as this was, and lots of money. Way to go. Congratulations.
Thank you, Jack.
I was able to do a tour here a couple of weeks ago, and I was quite impressed with how it was done. The very innovative things that you guys have done. That was really neat. And I was just wondering about a couple of your facilities that you, well, like the domestic violence, that home. Are you gonna vacate that or sell it or do something? And then also, I thought you had some Section 8 housing homes somewhere.
We do, Jack, those are part of our transitional housing program that I talked about. So we actually have 6 units that are have project-based Section 8 vouchers in them through the Housing Authority. We've been leasing a lot of apartments and houses in town because we've had a federal transitional housing grant to do that. That grant's going away, and so we won't be able to lease those. Our transitional housing program will actually reduce to just 6 units. We are working right now with the Human Resource Council to try to make sure that those units that we've been leasing, that those landlords would just transition those units over to families that are either at the YWCA or in the Human Resource Council, so that we don't lose that housing stock to the market. And then as far as our 7-bedroom shelter facility, we're going to sell it. And I feel like we've had the best good fortune throughout this whole project. You know, the project's paid for, the pandemic hit, but we were already under construction, had bid on, bid out our materials, so that didn't impact us. And now we're going to be selling this large house, but it's a fixer-upper for sure, during a time when I budgeted 5 years ago that we'd get about $250,000 for it, and now it looks like it's going to be double that.
Wow. And just a follow-up question. There's certainly the challenges of staffing and stuff has always been an issue for a lot of other nonprofits, but I think it's going to be an issue for some time in the future. But what kind of challenges do you see financially, for instance, in supporting? You've gotten quite large and quite diverse, and what's your biggest challenge you see ahead?
Well, we have, I call it our 3-legged stool of financial support. We have grant funding, and that's always soft money. We don't know, especially because so much of it is government funding. We've been fortunate in that it's been strong for years. But I think there's quite a bit of risk there. And then we have our financial private support from individuals, foundations, and businesses. That has been growing. We've been intentionally growing that for the past 11 years, and now it's about 20% of our total income. And I think we'll be able to increase that, especially once you do a capital campaign the size that we did. You can expect to see up to a 30% increase in the number of annual donors. And so we're really going to be working on that. And then we're fortunate as a nonprofit to have a business venture. We have our Secret Seconds thrift stores, and they are, you know, they do well in good economic times as well as uncertain economic times. They are just thriving, and it's so interesting. I think it's like other retail coming out of this pandemic. We are just breaking records, monthly sales records. And it may be partly because of stimulus money, but I think it's just people are out spending. They're out shopping right now. So, but the stores provide close to 50% of our total revenue. I think we have quite a bit of risk when you have that much, depending on that much of your revenue coming from one source. So
we have reached our time. Any other final question? Okay. Cindy, thank you so much.
well, thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you, Cindy.
A marvelous presentation. Thank you. Applause, applause.